2020 NFL draft. I started tweeting about it. You know where I got in on this idea? I was kind of down on Justin Herbert anyway, but Ryan Wilson, I read his mocks every week. He told me that Justin Herbert's fading from the first round. They've been dropping him down. I was like, maybe I need to watch Herbert a little more closely. Watch him against Arizona State. I'm with him. I don't think he's a great prospect. Ryan, tell me why you're even further down on Justin Herbert now.
Well, we talk about this every week, and it just seems like he's not living up to the expectations that we've had for him for 2 years now. He didn't have a great year as a junior. He came back. I thought that was the right decision. He's improved in terms of his completion percentage, but he still, and Brady can talk to this, he still makes the same sort of mind-numbing mistakes that you can't make every single week and expect to be a top-tier NFL quarterback. And he's 6'6", he's 237. The physical traits jump off the page at you. 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's great. But he could have had 3 or 4 more interceptions against the Sun Devils in that Saturday night game. A couple passes were dropped. He had 2 terrible interceptions. And I just question his decision-making at this point, Brady. And I don't know at this point in proceedings, he's in the 11th hour of his college career, what's going to magically change between now and next August, September, where you can feel comfortable with him as a starting NFL quarterback.
All valid points, so let's try to add some more context to it. Here's my feelings on him, though. He, regardless of what the stats or film looks like, he will be a first-round pick because of his raw talent and ability. The 6'6", the 237, the athleticism, the arm strength, all those things. That's what's going to make him potentially a first-round pick. And the other thing is, especially for you guys who are Coldplay fans, there's a song called Fix You. That is what NFL teams feel like they can do with a guy like Justin Herbert. They feel like they're going to be able to bring him in and fix you. That's what they're going to think they can do with him, okay? Here's the issue. When you go back and look at the Arizona State game from this past week, and we've got a number of plays we can talk through, there's some things that are fixable, and there's some things that aren't. And I think the first thing I would just point out and say, I don't like this Oregon offense. I don't think it's very conducive for Justin Herbert. But right here, this is about processing. So he took that extra hitch, and then he airmails it outside. Unfortunately, they're on the near hash. And so if we can go back to the previous play, I thought we had it on a loop. Maybe we're just running through all 3 at this point. But anyways, what I'm trying to point out is anytime he has to get off that first read, it becomes then difficult for him working to his second, third read. So the first missed throw, not only are they on the near hash, which they need to move off and be on something else, but you see that often throughout his reads. When he has to go to his second, third read, he has a hard time doing that. Then you see errant throws on short routes like a hitch or a wide receiver screen, throws that really should be gimmies and layups. And then you see times like this one, a go route versus 10 yards off coverage on, 2nd and 10, we've got an easy completion up top to his tight end who's running with a bunch of cushion. And then finally this throw, again, airmailing another corner route or sail route, depending on what your offense is. His feet were actually set up to throw the post, and instead he ends up throwing the sail route or 7 route, depending on the system that you're in. And so those things, as far as his footwork and where his eyes are and what he's doing, those are all fixable. They can be drilled. They can help him. The problem is, like this throw right here, you see a dime, you see a nice go route, and then the next throw, he ends up throwing one into the ground. Those inconsistencies in his throwing motion throughout the course of the game, it's one of the reasons why last year when I was preparing for their bowl game versus Michigan State, I was floored why people thought he was going to be the first overall quarterback taken. There were just too many things that he lacked in this game and too many things that are kind of too easy. For example, the hitch that he just threw into the ground, he has a running back fake with that. He doesn't need to show a flash fake, right? It's not fooling anyone. That hitch route, it needs to be out on time. That's what's most important. There's other times, too, throughout the course of these clips, you'll see him kind of give a flash fake, then drop back and try to throw a timing route. The running back has the linebacker in blitz protection. And at the NFL level, you don't even make that fake. They call it a proximity fake, meaning the running back just being close to you is enough to suck those guys up at the second level because that running back's got responsibility for the linebacker anyway. And so there's all these little things where he's played enough football. He should kind of know better, and he should know, how he needs to adjust his drops, how he needs to get the ball out on time, and he just doesn't do it. So that's the concern for me. He has all the raw talent and ability, but he just doesn't do it consistently enough. And at this point, he's played so much football that I have a hard time thinking that someone's going to be able to take him in the NFL and be able to fix him. I think the biggest thing they need to do is put him in a system where he can run the football because he is athletic enough, and I do think he's a pretty decent runner when he decides to take off, which isn't very often. And then put in a lot of one read and run progressions for him, or take some of the decision-making, out of, for example, 1 high, 2 high reads, where you're reading one side of the field versus one, the other side of the field versus the other. Take all that out of it. Just give him pure progression reads where he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Simplify things for him. Allow him to use some of that athleticism, that big arm to take some shots downfield. He's going to have to find himself in a good situation, I think, if he's going to have success at the next level.
So, Brady, you mentioned fix you and Coldplay. The other side of that coin is that's sort of the toxic relationship when you're trying to convince yourself that your girlfriend isn't crazy and you're going to make it work no matter what. And then you both end up in a car at the bottom of a lake and things didn't turn out so well. So I'm not speaking from experience. I've just heard that story. But let me ask you this, broader terms. So you talk about simplifying things for Justin Herbert. How does that translate in terms of being a franchise quarterback? Because if you don't understand what you're supposed to be doing on a play-by-play basis, and I'm not saying Justin Herbert isn't smart. By all accounts, he's an incredible human being and does really well in school and all that. But on the football field, what's the what kind of coaching do you have to have? What kind of system do you need to be in to have any sort of success at the next level if you're going to be a day 1, day 2 pick?
So I guess I'll answer that question by saying this, being book smart and street smart and all that and stuff, that there's really no correlation to on the field. Your ability for recall to take from what you saw on film and then apply it on the field, that takes a certain type of intelligence. Understanding and memorizing a playbook takes a certain type of intelligence. But we've also seen guys who aren't necessarily great at school be able to do that, and guys who are good at school not be able to do that, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. The knock on Ryan Fitzpatrick is always throws too many interceptions. Interceptions a lot of times come down to decision making. So that's not really an issue for Justin Herbert. He actually tends to be a pretty good decision maker in regards to his touchdown interception ratio and not forcing things. But the question that you're asking is, how do you simplify an offense for a franchise quarterback? You just try to take things off of his plate. So as far as the protection scheme goes, let the center handle it. If he wants to override in certain scenarios, let him override. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty simple for the most part. You're going to have some gap schemes. You're going to have, some other, not many, probably man blocking schemes. And the problem with that is you then get schemed up. People can kind of figure out who the offensive line is responsible for, who the running back's responsible for, and that's where they put a guy up in the line of scrimmage. They end up dropping that guy out, and they bring a guy on the other side, and therein lies a free rusher on you when you really have enough to block that guy. So some of those things, you'll try to simplify, but then you have to worry about getting out schemed. And when you get out schemed, what you have to be able to combat that with is your quarterback's ability to improvise. That's where I'm at a crossroads with him, because this offense is one in which they really want to run the football. That's Mario Cristobal's kind of blueprint stable. He's an offensive line guy. They've got a great offensive line, and they do have a good rushing attack. But they should involve Justin Herbert as part of that rushing attack, and they don't. So it takes away some of that big play potential, in my mind, from them. And I think whoever would have him next needs to run him. They need to incorporate him as part of that. So you have some zone read schemes. You have some design quarterback runs. He's big. He's fast. He can take it. Trust me on that. The next thing is talking about the reads. When you take out the variations of different types of reads, like having a big alert with a progression or having 1 high, 2 high. Some teams call that a pre-snap look. When you take all of that stuff out and you just go with a progression read, it doesn't make it quite as difficult. The game kind of slows down because your eyes and your feet and your body are turning in a direction regardless of whether or not, what the coverage is, whether or not he's open. And then you can work through the progression because everything's kind of worked in through timing. So there's some things you can do schematically to simplify it. And it may sound like a bad signal early on for your quarterback, but it's really just seeing if he's going to be capable. And that's the tough part about taking him in the first round is you're going to potentially have him for 5 years, and it's plenty of time to develop him. But that would basically mean some of this stuff is he's not actually playing. You've got him sitting on the bench. And we all know that if he's a first-round draft pick, he's probably going to play at some point in time his rookie year, whether he's ready or not, especially if he goes to a bad team.
Indeed. All right. I would implore, maybe not implore, but suggest that everybody who enjoyed the Justin Herbert conversation, go check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/CBS Sports. We have the clips, of Justin Herbert and Brady breaking down the throws. Sure, Debo didn't do a great job of setting up for Brady. Brady
got him, though. He got him, man. That's all that matters. He got the tapes. It's tough to get.
No, Debo went out and got all the Herbert throws and cut them up and put them on video for you. It's awesome. Yeah.
Hey, Brinson.
Yeah.
I want to ask Brady quickly, and Brinson, you can answer this as well. Is Justin Herbert, would you take him in the first round?
No.
I think someone's going to. I'd like to go back and watch more before I make that sort of declaration. And I also think the team that you're on really matters. Like it's not just, to me, a yes or no question to answer. I do think your situation that he's entering into plays a factor. And, let's say, for example, the Chargers want to take him. And if you do sign Phillip Rivers back for another year or two, that's like a pretty good situation to take him in because he can learn and develop behind him. And you've got a situation where he can kind of mold into that. You take him at the Bengals, that's a recipe for disaster.
Bengals are generally a recipe for disaster. Yeah, that's a fair breakdown. I guess the thing is too, like if you're going to take somebody in the first round, if you're going to take a quarterback, you should probably take him in the first round because you get the 5th-year option, and that way it gives you a little additional evaluation time. But you know what? If you think the quarterback's good, you're probably going to sign him after 3 years anyway, and then get stuck with his contract, a la Jared Goff. Anyway, make sure to check it out on YouTube, youtube.com/CBS Sports. It's rivalry weekend in college football. Auburn, Alabama has to be on CBS, right? It is, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. Make sure to watch that on SEC Live. Go to cbssports.com/SEC and you can watch it. I mean, I assumed it was, but sometimes you don't know. I don't really want to look till Saturday to find out. Who are you looking for, Ryan, playing this weekend? That we know there's a ton of guys in Ohio State, Michigan. We've been over all those guys: Chase Young, J.K. Dobbins, of course, Nico Collins. What about Clemson, South Carolina? Who stands out to you in that game?
3 guys who could potentially be first-round picks. Travis Etienne is the running back. He may go day 2, but he is certainly top running back this year. T. Higgins, high point catcher, big radius catcher, and Isaiah Simmons, who might be the best prospect on this team. He was one of the best defensive players on that team last year. They had 3 first-round picks on the defensive line. He plays linebacker/safety hybrid. He actually plays free safety sometimes, and he's an absolute monster. So I love him. Javon Kinlaw is the defensive tackle for South Carolina. He's one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in the league, so he could certainly work his way into the first round. And then Brian Edwards, I think he's number 87. If you want to watch Brian Edwards and just get a sense for who he is, watch the Alabama game. He is a monster. He just trucks guys. He's great at catching the ball in traffic. He's a lot of fun. So those are a bunch of guys that could get drafted, most of them, by the way, in the first round.
You drafting? Do you think you think Clemson wins by 30 in that game, Brady?
Yes, I do. I think Clemson. I think I actually had to throw in a score for that game. Last time I checked, the spread it was like 27-ish, or is it 30 now?
No. It started at like 25, and it quickly has moved up to like 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget exactly what I threw in as far as the point total, but I think I had him just covering that 27, maybe like a what did I say? I think I said maybe like 42-14, something like that. That's kind of how I see that game going. Look, Clemson has to win, and they has to win convincingly because I think they're hoping that potentially they'll be able to continue to keep inching their way up into the top 2 spots. However, it might be tough, though, because they have that lack of strength of schedule, and they're going to play a team in the ACC championship game that's not going to be ranked most likely. So there's not really much they can do for their case.
Yeah, I think either Virginia or Virginia Tech. What about an Alabama-Auburn on CBS? Who are you watching, Brady?
Well, there's 7 guys in Ryan Wilson's mock draft in the first round. Ryan, do you want to go through all those guys, and then I'll maybe touch on a couple of the Auburn guys?
Yeah, let me see. I don't have the mock draft, but I have the names. I had 11 guys to watch. That's not including Tua. Tua wasn't in the mock draft. So Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, we know about. Alex Leatherwood and Jedrick Wills are the offensive tackles that are likely first rounders. Stephon Diggs is brother. He plays cornerback. He is a monster. Terrell Lewis, who's been injured the last 2 years, the defensive end, is playing out of his mind this year. He's finally healthy. A guy that I don't think was on the list for first rounders, but could be Xavier McKinney, the safety. Raekwon Davis, the defensive tackle. I mean, the list goes on and on. I haven't even talked about Auburn yet, Brady.
Yeah, look, Auburn's got a bunch of guys up front on their defensive line. In particular, is a Derek Brown. I mean, he may very well be one of the first guys you look at taking, but he's the guy who's going to stand out the most, I think, on their defensive front. As far as their offense goes, I'm trying to think through some of the names. I mean, there's not really anything that sticks out quite as much as what Alabama has, especially as far as draft eligible guys and guys who've proven themselves thus far. But really, it's the defensive front for Auburn. Like, that's the eye to keep an eye on. There's a number of guys, Brown in particular. Yeah, and you can't miss him. Huge, and he's number 5. All those big boys wear single digits there at Auburn for some reason, which makes them look even bigger than they actually are.
Auburn's left tackle, Brady, Prince Tega Wanago. He's a guy who people like the beginning of the year. He's super raw. He probably is not a day 1 guy right now, but he could certainly be day 2 just for the upside productivity.
All right. What about in Oklahoma? What about Bedlam? Bedlam, Ryan. Oklahoma OSU. CeeDee Lamb, of course, they missed that game. Maybe you question his toughness, as Brady pointed out recently. Chuba, love Chuba.
Easy. I think they actually were confirming it was a concussion. I don't know if anyone tested his toughness. I think we were more concerned about what the deal was, if it was disciplinary or if it was something like the concussion protocol. But yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean that's on me. I didn't mean to put words in Brady's mouth. Didn't say that. In fact, it was Pete Prisco who did that.
Okay,
it's okay. You know who else I love in this game? Chuba.
Yeah,
Chuba Hubbard.
He's fine.
Yeah, sucks that Tylan Wallace is out too. He was a good wide receiver.
Yeah, he's this wide receiver class, by the way. I mean, you're talking about CeeDee Lamb, Tylan Wallace. It stinks that he's not part of it, but they are so deep, man. I mean, there are so many guys, so many studs in this draft class. This game would have had two of arguably the best. I mean, you could make the case that Tylan Wallace is right up there as far as production, but Hubbard's been phenomenal. He's a guy that I think if I had to do a Heisman race right now, he'd be probably number 4 for me behind Justin Fields. I mean, it's remarkable what he's putting up, and he's not getting anyone talking about it right now. So people, for example, last year, Justice Hill, who very similar skill set, both can run the football, catch the football well. For whatever reason, Oklahoma State didn't use him quite as much in the passing game. They started to a little bit more last week. So it's something that I think they're going to have to continue to provide help for Drew Brown. Their starter, Spencer Sanders, is out for the rest of the season. So, look, Justice Hill actually said this to him. I remember talking to him that the guy who was going to replace me said he's probably going to be better than I am. So he, already had said that about Chuba, and he very well looks like a bigger, better version of Justice Hill in this Oklahoma State offense.
By the way, 2 weeks ago, I guess, was Oklahoma State, Kansas. Chuba versus Puka. What a matchup, running back names and talents too. Anybody else you want to touch on before we get out of here, Ryan?
Just one name to watch in Ohio State. We haven't talked a lot about this guy. I don't know if we ever have, but Devon Hamilton, I think he's number 53, plays defensive tackle for Ohio State. He's going to be a second-round pick. He is awesome. I watched him a couple games earlier than I watched the game last week, the Ohio State-Penn State game. He is so much fun to watch. Maybe he's living off Chase Young. I don't think he is. He's doing a lot of the heavy lifting by himself. And if you're looking for someone to watch next to Chase Young, look for number 53, Devon Hamilton.
Only thing I'm worried about with him is his size. Not quite as big. He does have good quicks, good fire off the ball, plays with good leverage, good hands. And I don't know. That's the tough thing to tell. I mean, especially when you see these talented defensive lines. We've seen it at Clemson. We saw it at NC State. Will, you know about that group. All 4 of those guys got drafted, what was it, a few years ago now, in the first, 3 or 4 rounds of the draft. That's the predicament. You're sitting there saying, well, is he doing it, or is it Chase Young and everyone's sliding their line or protecting things up to give him help? But no doubt about it, Ryan, he's been phenomenal. Damon Arnett, I don't know how much you guys talked about him. He's been a part of that too. Fuller. I mean, you could go on down the line. Talking with Urban Meyer, he really feels like, probably outside of Tuf Borland, every other player or every single player, both offensively and defensively, is going to get drafted. That's how confident he feels in all of these guys that are starting right now for Ohio State and how talented this team is.
Hey, quickly, we'll get out of here. 1-word answer, because mine is Clemson. Who's going to win, if you had to pick right now, the national title?
Ohio State.
Look, man, I'm going to give you a bunch of word answers. Joe Burrow, baby, LSU, Cleddy H. That's my new nickname for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cleddy H.
This playoff has potential to be awesome.
It does, but the difficulty is whoever ends up being 2 kind of gets screwed because you got to play Clemson. So that semifinal, that path to get to the national championship game ends up being so much more difficult, in my opinion, than most likely what the number 1 seed is going to end up facing as the 4 seed. And so because of that, I think there is an extreme advantage to whoever the College Football Playoff Committee puts at number 1, because no one wants to face Clemson. That's a team that's beaten everyone this year easily and really hasn't been tested through the ACC that's so weak this year. Will, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do. I made a lot of money on Clemson against NC State. The only game that was close with Clemson, the Carolina.
That's right.
Yeah, when Mac made the mistake of going for 2 at the end. Who's the 4th team in? Who's the 4th team in with? I think it's Georgia.
Well, they can't be unless they beat LSU, and then LSU would drop probably to number 4 and still make it. That's the only way, because if they lose in the SEC championship game, they're out. So you're basically you have these 3 teams to pick from. Bama, where if they beat Auburn and remain in that around that 5 spot or the potential of sliding in, if Georgia loses to LSU, you just kind of wonder how the committee is going to look at them with Mac Jones, not Tua Tagovailoa. Not sure they get in over a 1-loss Utah conference champ or Oklahoma, Don't give up on Oklahoma. I'm just saying they'll be more tested by the time they would get to that point. Beating a top 25 team at Oklahoma State this week, and they would have to beat Baylor again in the Big 12 championship game, another team that's probably going to be ranked somewhere in the top 12 based on tonight's rankings, even though we're talking about tomorrow. So they'll have a better resume, a better case, and you could maybe make the case more deserving, even though Utah looks like the more complete team and as well deserving being a conference champion in this particular scenario.
So we'd be looking at, and I think any one of those things could happen. We'd be looking at LSU versus Oklahoma, where the over/under is like 78, and I'll take the over.
Yeah,
they're not. Yeah, Oklahoma can't stop anybody.
You know what, though? I think actually that LSU would line up favorably versus Oklahoma. That offense has not looked the same lately, and that's probably one of the reasons why if they don't make it in the fourth spot after winning out the rest of the way, it would be because their defense hasn't fixed their issues and their offense just hasn't looked quite as dynamic as what we were accustomed to seeing with Kyler and Baker Mayfield. Honestly, they're kind of a victim of their own demise because they've been so good offensively that they held themselves to a standard and they just haven't necessarily been that the past couple of weeks. I
mean, Jalen Hurts is really good, but he's not Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray. Like
statistically, they were on pace to make an argument they were actually better. They set the record last year for yards per play at like 8.6 yards per play. This year they were on pace. This is like a couple weeks ago now for 9.29. Think about that. Every time they would run an offensive play, it was basically a first down.
Yeah,
it's absurd.